Exposing government waste and abuse of your liberties every day. Sean Hannity is on right now.
They're Americans in every way, but on paper.
Apollonar Altamirano had come in and wanted to buy cigarettes. Altamirano then pulled a gun and pointed it at Grant. Grant immediately offered up the cigarettes, and Altamirano then shot him point blank in the face. My son's death was completely preventable. Apollonar Altamirano had been in the country illegally since he was 14.
If we cannot get comprehensive immigration reform as we need and as we should, with a real path to citizenship that will actually grow our economy, then I will go as far as I can, even beyond President Obama, to make sure law-abiding, decent people in this country are not ripped away from their families.
My son dropped his girlfriend off. It was her birthday. He gave her a kiss and told her, "Happy birthday, I love you, see you tomorrow." He drove about 10 minutes, less than a mile from his apartment, and was shot in the head by an illegal alien who went on a shooting spree. This should not happen. Before my son was born, I wrote in his baby book, and I said this to him throughout his life, and on his birthday I would change it by adding in his year. I would tell him, "Did I ever tell you that out of all the children in the world, you're the one I would have picked, and I deserved to have him at the end of my life sitting next to me." And Paul Ryan and other politicians that don't think a border is worth it, this is the loss.
I'm not about to let anybody who can make a contribution to our economy and our society get thrown away.
My youngest son, Joshua, was a senior in high school and had his whole life ahead of him. He went to school and never returned. As Josh walked up to the doors of the school that morning, Hermilo Morales walked up as well. At trial, the killer testified on his behalf and gave exact testimony on how he systematically killed Joshua. He first threw a punch in the face so that Joshua's vision was messed up and he could not fight back. He next kneed Joshua in an abdomen so that he would go to the ground. Josh went to the ground as his spleen was sliced in half. The killer was aggravated that it was not over yet. He was a black belt in mixed martial arts and thought he could do this without any blood. He was aggravated it was not over. He said he grew tired of watching bloody bubbles come from Joshua's nose as he was trying to breathe. Next, he took a closet rod and beat Josh over the head again and again until the rod broke in 4 pieces. Joshua was still breathing. Next, he strangled him. He let him go to see if it was over. No, it's not over. So he continued until there were no more bloody bubbles. He must have said it 6 times from the stand. He waited and he watched him die. He tied Josh's body up, stuffed it in the back seat of our truck, bought gas, dumped Josh in a field and set his body on fire. The killer went home, took a shower, and went to see a movie, had popcorn and Coke.
It's obvious the Republicans are more afraid of the Dreamers than they are of ISIS.
Welcome back. 25 now till the top of the hour as we come to you from Austin, Texas. Now, we're here for a reason tonight, and one of the biggest issues to emerge in this campaign has to do with illegal immigration, the vetting of refugees, whether or not it's even possible, and protecting the homeland. And we're going to start out tonight doing something that you will never see, I promise you, in the New York Times or the Washington Post. They're too busy telling their readers, the few that they have left, that Sean Hannity is going to vote for the more conservative candidate. Big, shocking, breaking news. But we're going to do something tonight that nobody in the media will ever do. And that means ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, or any of the nation's big newspapers. And that is, we are going to give you the human cost. And by the way, it's not just money. It's not just the impact on the educational system, the criminal justice system, the healthcare system, with 11.3 million illegal immigrants entering the country. I have said for the longest time, the biggest problem associated with illegal immigration has to do with the fact that if somebody can cross the border at will, and they just want to come here for a job, well, so too can ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other radical Islamic terrorists that want to bring harm to your home and your community and your town and your big city. And on top of that, we have 95 million Americans out of the labor force. There's an economic component, and that economic component is every illegal immigrant is competing with those 95 million Americans without jobs. And sometimes they're beating out Americans for those jobs. And in the process, by having more competition for the few jobs that are available under this crappy economy, well, that means they're driving down wages for the people that eventually do get hired. But there's an even worse toll than that. And we'll show you all of this tonight on Hannity. Now, we invited Hillary Clinton to do a town hall with us on this. She is yet to get back to us. I'm not holding my breath. But Donald Trump will be there tonight, and part of tonight is going to be hearing the stories of families that lost their loved ones, never to see them again because of illegal immigrants in this country. Now, when Trump first announced that he was running for president, it was such a big deal, remember? Oh, he said some, not all, some have committed murder, and some have committed rape, and some are committing other crimes. Now, we're being warned on the refugee issue, like what has happened in Belgium and Paris and Germany and Great Britain and the rest of Europe, that, well, ISIS and other terrorist groups will infiltrate that population of refugees. And that means that what happened in Europe will likely happen here. But that's not stopping President Obama or Hillary Clinton, who wants even a 550% increase from the number of refugees Obama's bringing in. But they have their own Secret Service. They have their own protection. They're not going to be impacted in all likelihood by any of this if something happens. But we have two people on the phone. Steve Ronnebeck is with us. He's the father of 21-year-old Grant Ronnebeck, who was shot in the face and murdered by an illegal immigrant who had previously been released by ICE on a $10,000 bond. Now, Grant, well, he was working as a clerk at a Quick Trip in Arizona when the convicted felon, an illegal immigrant, entered the store and murdered this young man because he wasn't handing over a pack of cigarettes he was stealing fast enough. And Grant's murderer, by the way, was a self-proclaimed member of a drug cartel, had previously been accused of a violent home invasion where he was raping a young woman and kept her kidnapped for a week, as I understand it. Also with us is Julie Govach, and she's the mother of 25-year-old Spencer, who was executed and shot in the head at random on January 31st, not far from where we are in Austin, in Houston, Texas, while waiting at a traffic light. She's going to be on our TV show tonight talking to Mr. Trump. Now, his murderer was an illegal immigrant who had been deported numerous times after committing multiple violent crimes. Anyway, between 2010 and 2014, a group of 121 illegal aliens were held by Immigration and Customs Enforcement and scheduled for deportation. Despite being scheduled for that, they were released and removed from the country. They have subsequently all been charged with homicide-related offenses. How would you like to be one of those 121 families in that short period of time? Mr. Ronnebeck, Julie, thank you both for being with us. I know the thoughts and prayers of this audience go out to you, and I know the rest of the media doesn't tell this story, but we're going to tell it tonight in a way that I think is extraordinarily powerful, considering this is now a front and center issue in this campaign. And thank you both for being with us.
Thanks, Sean.
Steve, tell us about what happened with your son, Grant.
Well, Grant was, again, like you had said earlier, he was working the overnight shift at a QT. Apollinaire Altamirano came in, dumped a jar of change out on the counter. Grant went to start counting the change and evidently wasn't counting it fast enough. Altamirano said, "Aren't you going to give me my cigarettes?" And Grant tried to explain to him, "Hey, I need to count your money first." Altamirano produced a gun, pointed it at Grant. Grant immediately offered up the cigarettes, gave them to him.
Immediately. What did he care? It's not his cigarettes. He's like, "Here, take them. Just get out of here."
Yeah, absolutely. And then Altamirano shot him in the face, then went behind the counter, stepped over Grant's dead body, grabbed a couple more cigarettes, and walked out of the Quick Trip and got in his car and left. There was no running or in a hurry. It was like it was normal for him.
And then when you find out the background of this guy, a convicted felon that had raped and kidnapped a young woman for almost a week, I mean, you've got to be thinking, my country's not protecting me. I blame the government. They failed you and your family and your son by not enforcing the laws that are on the books. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's, he was able to plead down the rape and the home invasion to just felony burglary. I think it was second-degree burglary he pled it down to because he qualified for the Dreamer Act because he has children that are citizens. This is happening every day. It's ridiculous.
Wow. Julie, tell us the story about your 25-year-old son, Spencer.
Spencer
was a small business owner. He established his own guitar shop when he was 22. And about 2 years into his business, the economy was slowing, and he took a full-time job, one that Americans won't do. He worked at a warehouse, and he was in the process of moving his business to a smaller location. And we had just wrapped everything up, and move-in day was January 31st, 2015. And so he took his girlfriend over to his stepbrother's house and watched a movie. And afterwards, it was midnight. It became her birthday. They stopped and grabbed some cookies, and he dropped her off and gave her a kiss and said, "Happy birthday. I love you. See you tomorrow."
So your son's a musician. He's playing in a band. Apparently a very talented musician. He has a girlfriend. Drops his girlfriend off, and like a block after that, this happens. Explain it.
Yes. Plus, he was a small business owner. Yeah, after he dropped her off, he gave her a kiss and said, "Happy birthday. I love you. See you tomorrow." Went about 10 minutes down the road, was less than a mile from his home, was sitting at a red light at the turn signal, and an illegal alien drove up and shot my son in the head through the passenger window, and my son died alone in a vehicle in Houston, Texas. My son was one of 4 shot that night, 2 of which died. My son was one that died.
I honestly, I'm never at a loss for words. I just cannot believe that you have been failed along with so many other families on this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, this illegal alien had been deported 3 times before he was put in federal prison for coming back into the country again. He was a known gang member, burglary, assault, drugs, and while he was in federal prison during that time, he assaulted a rival gang member. He was supposed to get a mandatory 20 years, but the United States District Attorney did a plea bargain for 5 years, and he was released in 2010, deported at that time, and came back to Houston and lived until he went on this shooting spree and murdered my son. If he would have just been given half of that sentence, my son would still be here.
In other words, all these lives that could have been saved if we, in fact, secured our borders, or if we, in fact, in both instances, Grant and Spencer, their lives could have been saved because we had opportunities to get both of them long before they murdered your sons.
Yeah, absolutely. The federal government knew he had burglary, assault, had come back into the country multiple times, and still did a plea deal at the minimum possible for this foreign invader. Wow.
Steve, you hear this? How many other parents have both of you spoken with that have gone through similar experiences, Steve?
Oh, several. And just something else about it to add to Julie's, Apollinaire Altamirano was served a restraining order less than a week before he killed my son. The police have him. They know he's dangerous. He had pointed a gun at somebody else and threatened to kill him less than a week before he killed Grant. So again, they had their opportunity to pick him up and put him back in jail or deport him. They didn't. There's families like Marianne Mendoza, mother of Brandon Mendoza, Dominic Durden, Sabine Durden's son. They were killed by drunk drivers, and these are repeat drunk drivers. They're convicted felons. That they're staying in our country. There's no reason for it. They should be deported, or they should be serving more time in jail. But for some reason, these illegals are getting a pass. They're able to plead down their crimes. They're able to.
But in the case of the person that killed your son, Grant, he raped a woman and kidnapped her and kept her hostage a week.
Yeah.
He should have been in jail for the rest of his life and or deported after he died. We could have sent his dead body back after he spent the appropriate time in jail, which would have been life from my standpoint.
Absolutely. But again, you hear the government's blaming it on, well, their countries don't want them back. Well, of course they don't want them back. They're criminals. They don't want them back. But yet Mexico has hired an attorney for my son's killer to fight the death penalty.
I've got to run here, but I want to say